The psychology of marriage. There's a quiet realization that happens in many marriages, not during an argument, not during a crisis, but in an ordinary moment. You look at the person next to you and feel something you can't fully explain. Not distance, not disconnection, but less. And the question that follows is uncomfortable. Was it always like this and I just didn't notice? Problem. Deep dive. Marriage doesn't usually break in obvious ways. It changes slowly. In the beginning, everything feels intentional. You listen closely, you respond carefully, you notice small details. But over time, those small efforts fade. Not because you stopped caring, but because the relationship becomes familiar. You begin to assume instead of asking. You react instead of understanding. Silence replaces curiosity. And gradually, a subtle shift happens. You stop experiencing your partner as a person and start experiencing them as a role: husband, wife, responsibility. In daily life, this looks normal. You share space, you share routines. But internally, something feels different, less alive. You may notice thoughts like, "We don't talk like we used to." It feels repetitive. "I don't feel the same connection." And yet, nothing is clearly wrong. This is what makes it difficult, because there's no event to point to, just a slow fading of something that once felt natural. Psychology describes this as relational habituation. The brain adapts to what is repeated, even people. Which leads to a deeper question. If love is real, why does it feel like it weakens over time? Before assuming something is lost, it's important to understand this. Marriage doesn't remove love. It changes the way love is processed in the brain. In early relationships, your brain is highly alert. It treats the other person as novel, important, unpredictable. This activates attention and emotional intensity. But over time, the brain seeks stability. It reduces effort. It automates responses. This is not failure. It's efficiency. Your brain is trying to conserve energy. So when connection feels weaker, it doesn't always mean love disappeared. It often means love has shifted from active awareness to background familiarity. The problem is not that love fades. The problem is that awareness fades. And without awareness, connection becomes passive. Which brings us to what's actually happening inside the brain: psychological mechanism. Marriage operates through three main psychological systems: familiarity, attachment, and prediction. Each plays a different role. Familiarity reduces effort. Attachment creates emotional safety. Prediction allows the brain to anticipate behavior. At first, prediction is low. You don't fully know the other person, so your brain stays engaged. But over time, prediction increases. You think you know what they'll say, how they'll react, so the brain stops paying close attention. This creates a subtle illusion. You believe you're interacting with your partner, but you're often interacting with your mental model of them. Here's a simple metaphor. Your relationship becomes like a book you've read many times. You stop reading each line. You assume what's coming next. But people are not books. They continue changing, even if slowly. So when the brain stops updating its perception, connection weakens. Not because the person changed, but because your attention stopped tracking that change. There's another layer. The brain avoids emotional discomfort. So instead of exploring differences, it simplifies them. This leads to patterns like quick reactions, repeated, arguments, emotional withdrawal. All of this reinforces distance, which raises an important question. If the brain naturally reduces effort, how do you maintain connection over time? Practical framework. This isn't about forcing feelings. It's about understanding how connection works and reactivating it. Here are 5 psychology-based principles. 1. Update your perception. What to do. Actively notice what is different about your partner now. Why it works in the brain. Attention updates neural representations, preventing outdated mental models. Real-life example. Instead of assuming how they feel, you ask, "What's been on your mind lately?" You begin seeing them as they are, not as they were. Break predictive patterns. What to do. Change small routines intentionally. Why it works in the brain. Novelty disrupts prediction and increases dopamine. Real-life example. A different conversation style. A different way of spending time. This creates new neural engagement. 3. Slow down reactions. What to do. Pause before responding in emotional moments. Why it works in the brain. This reduces amygdala reactivity and allows the prefrontal cortex to engage. Real-life example. Instead of reacting immediately, you take a moment and respond more intentionally. This prevents repetitive conflict loops. 4. Express internal states. Clearly what to do. Say what you feel directly, without assuming the other person understands. Why it works in the brain. Clear communication reduces ambiguity and cognitive misinterpretation. Real-life example. I feel disconnected today, instead of expecting them to notice. Clarity builds connection. 5. Re-engage. Through behavior. What to do. Act in ways that reflect connection, even if you don't feel it strongly. Why it works in the brain. Behavior influences emotion through feedback loops. Real-life example. You initiate conversation, attention, or care intentionally. Over time, the feeling follows the action. Here's the model to remember. Marriage doesn't fail because love disappears. It weakens when attention becomes automatic. The brain turns people into patterns, and patterns into assumptions. But connection requires something different. Not instantly, but gradually. Marriage is not something you have. It's something that's continuously shaped by how you notice, by how you respond, by how present you are. Love doesn't always feel intense. Sometimes it becomes quiet. But quiet doesn't mean gone. It often means it's waiting for your attention again.